Welcome back to our second session of the New Voices talk series on women and their body. Today we celebrate like the World Day of Philosophy, and we are glad to have here with us Maria Borges. She is full professor of philosophy at the University of Santa Catarina in Brazil. She was a visiting scholar at the University of Pennsylvania in the US and at the Humboldt University in Germany and at the Columbia University in the US. She is researcher of the CNPq in Brazil, and she's the author of several books. In English, there has appeared Body and Justice and Emotion, Reason and Action in Kant in 2019. And she has some books in Portuguese where I will read the English title, History and Metaphysics in Hegel, for example, or Love in 2004. She had also a book on actuality of Hegel in 2008. She was the co-author of All You Should Know About Ethics in 2003. She co-edited Kant on Freedom and Nature in 2005 and Philosophy, Sexism and Feminism in 2014. And her philosophical interests are Kantian ethics, theory of emotions, and feminist philosophy. And today she will speak of the body and the duty to be beautiful. And I will leave the floor to you. I will shut down my camera so that we have only you and the presentation to be recorded. Many thanks for accepting the invitation to speak in our New Voices talk series.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. I would like to thank Jil Sander and also Professor Ruth Hagengruber. And it's a pleasure to be here in the center to talk in this meeting with the Center of History of Women Philosophers and Scientists. And today is the Philosophy Day. Then we can think about this day as a Women Philosophers Day too. And today I will present something about the body and what I call the duty to be beautiful. I will share the screen. I hope it works. Okay, here it is.
Now we are back on the screen.
Beauty is the only thing, the highest currents we have.
Exactly.
I tried to show, it's a clip on the Neon Demon, where a man asked the boyfriend of model if she's beautiful or not. And then he said that beauty is not the only thing, that he was in love with her because of her beauty, not because of her beauty, but because of her virtues. And then the man there said, "Oh, you are kidding. It's not true. Beauty is not the most important thing. Beauty is the only thing, the highest currents that we have." Okay. Then it's the beginning of the talk. And then I go back. Can you hear me? And do you see this
Yes.
men are sublime? Okay. Then I'm going back to Kant. And according to Immanuel Kant, women could have the same intelligence as men and reach the same achievements. However, they would only get respect from men and not their love. In the observations on the beautiful and sublime, Kant claims, I quote Kant, the observations of the feeling of beautiful and sublime. Laborious learning or painful pondering, even if a woman should greatly succeed in it, destroy the merits that are proper to her sex. And because of their rarity, they can make of her an object of cold admiration. But at the same time, they will weaken the charms with which she exercises her great power over the other sex. This is written in the observations on the feeling of the beautiful and the sublime. It's pre-critical text, Kant's pre-critical text, but he continues to think about like this, even in the anthropology in his later works. The idea is that women could do science or philosophy, but that this will be related to the sublime and not to the beautiful. And then if she succeeds in it, if she has progress, it's okay, but there will be a result of that, a bad one, a bad outcome of this, because if she's intelligent and if she does science or philosophy, she will be the object of a cold admiration, and then she will lose the charms to seduce men. This is the idea. It's not that women could not do this, science or philosophy, but if she succeed in it, then she will lose her charms. Or if that's it. Then the effort in science, and you could add the effort in philosophy, is sublime, is heavy. Consequently, it's masculine. The feminine sex is beautiful, and this is not only the beauty of the body, of the face, the beautiful, the physical beauty, but it's also this idea of a light pleasure, a pleasure of the beautiful, a light conversations, not kind of profound thoughts, and this will be more feminine, and this will be the right aspect of the feminine gender, we'll say today. The feminine gender is beautiful, light. It pleases immediately. Then the effort to understand Descartes, Leibniz, and the Newton equations awake the feeling of the sublime. For this reason, it is again the feminine nature for Kant, of course. They could be taken by this difficult enterprise. However, they will lose all that pleases immediately, their beauty and lightness. And then there are some women at that time that understand Descartes, Leibniz, and Newton equations, and he mentions it. Kant mentions women of the 18th century who dare to enter the fields of knowledge and is considered masculine. Masculine. And Dacier, who has translated and commented on the Greek and Roman classics. Gabrielle Émilie, and also Marquise de Châtelet, who has translated and analyzed Newton's Principia. I quote Kant, a woman who has a head full of Greek, like Madame Dacier, or carries on fundamental controversies about mechanics, like Marquise de Châtelet. Marquise de Châtelet is here. And this is very sexist, what Kant will say is, or carries on fundamental controversies about mechanics, like Marquise de Châtelet, might as well even have a bird, for perhaps that would express more obviously the meaning of profundity for which she strives, or they strive. Okay. Then this is one of the most sexist sayings of Kant. And it seems that, okay, they could do this, but this is a kind of, even I work on Kant, I am a Kant specialist, but this is also kind of misogynist saying, because it seems that he is like enraged with these women that could enter the field, the masculine fields. Like when he talks about Marquise de Châtelet, she was already famous at that time, and she had relation with Voltaire. And then this is the not all men of I could say that not all men of that time thought like this. Men could not love these intelligent women for Kant because in order to love someone, they should feel superior to that person. Equality inspires respect and friendship. Love needs inequalities. Kant is categorical about the impossibility of loving someone who is considered superior to oneself. That is, the impossibility of a man to love a woman who he considers superior to himself. And in other texts, Kant also stresses this idea that in order to love someone, you could not have the feeling of respect, and because this is a kind of cold feeling. And if you love someone, but it's mainly for a man. For a man to love someone, this other person should be in an inferior position. And because man is sublime and then the woman is beautiful. And to be beautiful is to be light, but also to be inferior in intellectual. Okay. But now we were back to the 20th century. And unfortunately, we see that this Kantian sexist views are the views that many people share. And then there are some experiments that are made, and where we could prove that beauty, physical beauty, is very important for men. It's very important for women, and a man will prefer a beautiful woman instead of a not beautiful one. And this experiment were made by Tausend and Levy, and it was repeated some other times. And the outcome is more or less the same. Then in this experiment, male and female college students in the US viewed models who had been pre-rated for physical attractiveness and who were dressed in costumes representing 3 levels of economic status. Then they pre-rated for physical attractiveness of men and women, and each one they put a different outfit. One was dressed in like McDonald's staff, and the other was a professor or a teacher, something, and then the other one is a doctor or lawyer, and then it's the highest economic status. And from this, the college students reported their willingness to engage with these models in 6 relationships involving various levels of marital potential and sexual involvement. These levels were, who would you like to go for a coffee? And with whom would you like to date and have sex and enter a relationship and marry? These are 5, but there are another one that I forgot. And then the experiment reached the conclusion that the physical attractiveness of partners tends to be more important to men than women in actual relationships. Although both sexes are influenced by socioeconomic status and physical attractiveness, these components are weighted differently by potential partners. Means that for women, economic status were more important and physical attractiveness not that important. And for men, it was the opposite. Physical attractiveness was more important. And then usually the men preferred to date or have sex or even marry with the most beautiful woman that was presented to him. Okay. They claim that for men, the sexual desirability of potential partners is primarily determined by their physical attractiveness, and sexual desirability acts as a threshold of acceptability of other relationships requiring more investment. For women, cues to potential partners' socioeconomic status are a potent determinant of partners' acceptability for relationships that require significant levels of investment. If a man exceeds this threshold of acceptability, then the woman may decide to have sex with him. And then it means that for women, for a woman, this socioeconomic status of a man is required in order to begin dating or having sex or married or having a relationship. And for men, it was the opposite. The most important feature was beauty. Then you have here David Buss, that he made another research, and he tested 37 cultures, and also it was repeated another time, and it always shows more or less the same results. Then this is sex, the title of the research is Sex Differences in Human Mate Preferences. Evolutionary hypothesis tested in 37 cultures. Let me see. Beauty has been proven to be an important mate preference for human males, according to research. This research that was conducted by David Buss, entitled Sex Difference in Human Mate Preferences, Evolutionary Hypothesis Tested in 37 Cultures. This was a cross-cultural study which aimed at testing evolution-based hypotheses that explain species-typical or sex-typical mate preferences. According to Buss, mate preferences are important because they can affect the current direction of sexual selection by influencing who is differently excluded from and included in mating. He wanted to test some predictions that had already been made in previous studies. Then there were a lot of people, and the number was 10,000 people. And these people belong to 37 different cultures located on 6 continents and 5 islands. The instrument used by David Buss was composed of biographical data, the age difference preferred between the self and the partner, and a third section in which the subjects were asked to rate 18 characteristics on how important or desirable they would be in choosing a mate. Among these characteristics were dependable character, sociability, chastity, intelligence, good financial prospect, good looks, ambition, and industriousness. A 4-point scale was used, ranging from 3, indispensable, to 0, irrelevant or unimportant. And this research used 37 samples for 33 different countries. And then the result is that in 36 of 37 samples, females valued good financial prospect in a potential mate more highly than males did. In 34 of the 37 samples, females expressed a higher valuation than males for ambition and industriousness. And the 37 samples show sex differences for the characteristic good looks. Males value good looks more than women. For Buzz, the hypothesis that males value physical attractiveness in potential mates more than females do is strongly supported by this cross-cultural data. Then he aims at showing that good looks is very it's a very important characteristic for mating in the human species. And then but this and then the research shows that it's important for males good women good looks are important for males, but not for women. And then that in the mate market, if you can call this kind of mate market, and it's important for women to be beautiful in order to be chosen. And now I want to talk a little bit about my main thesis is that nowadays beauty becomes a duty. From the 20th century on, we see aesthetic procedures becoming popularized and can be enjoyed by an increasing number of women. Liposuction, Botox, breast prosthesis, implants, dental bleaching, modification of changing of the hair structure were becoming increasingly common and accessible. If on the one hand, this indicates greater autonomy in relation to the construction of the desired body, on the other hand, being beautiful becomes a duty. What I mean is that beauty is no longer a gift of nature, but the result of an action of the woman herself. And then if before we could say, oh, okay, she's not beautiful enough, but what can we do? Because this is the injustice of nature. And even if beauty is very important for women in this kind of mate, I analyze only the mate market, but sometimes even in her profession, it's also important. But if she's not beautiful, what can we do? Because this is kind of injustice, natural injustice, and a gift of nature. But nowadays, since we have all these aesthetical procedures that we can use, then you have a duty to be beautiful. Here I bring a book that is Intolerable Weight of Ugliness. It's from Joana Novaes. It's in Portuguese. She's Brazilian, and she analyzed contemporary terrorism, what she calls terrorism, in relation to beauty. I quote Joana Novaes: "We believe that contemporary terrorism, with regard to beauty, has less to do with the degree of repetitions of messages than with the apparent democratization of beauty. What is normative for contemporary women is not the fact that the beauty models are imposed, but the fact that she says without ceasing that she can be beautiful if she so chooses." I think that's very important here, that there is a choice. Nowadays, you have this choice to be beautiful. And then the problem is not that about the problem is not about this kind of repetition of messages like it was before, but that we have this kind of democratization of beauty. Then if you have this, and if this beauty surgeries or other ways to be beautiful are not that expensive nowadays, and then if you could do this, you should. And that's the idea of the democratization of beauty. Of course, it has a positive meaning that we can perhaps change your body if you want, then you have a kind of autonomy, but also that that you have the duty to change your body because it's not that difficult anymore. Then beautiful ceases to depend on a natural lottery and becomes a moral duty. Failure to fulfill this duty will be punished more harshly if the ugliness were simple given by nature. Of course, because if it was like a kind of natural lottery, then, oh, someone is not beautiful, what can we do? But if this ugliness was can be changed, then you will be punished, morally punished, if you don't do what we should do to be beautiful. Then who is ugly is by decision or by weakness of the will, by akrasia, a term well known in the ethics since Aristotle. Then you want to be ugly. If you are not beautiful, then it means that it's your decision to be not to be beautiful, or you are lazy. Then, but it's also a weakness of the will, and then either you don't want to be beautiful by decision, that's a problem, or you are a weak person. The woman knows what makes her beautiful, whether constant and intense treatments or physical exercise, and the failure to perform these rituals is due to laziness or weakness of character. Then it's not anymore a problem of nature. It's a problem, it's a moral problem. It becomes, to be beautiful becomes a moral problem. In the contemporary world, being beautiful will be a product of virtue. If you are a virtuous person, then you do all these rituals to take care of yourself or to be more beautiful, and then you could change your body by surgery, or even you have to go to gym every day and do all these intense treatments or physical exercise. And here we have a woman in this physical exercise. And then I think that among the ugly traits, one of the worst or the most terrible, that I call the most terrible sin in the contemporary world, is to be fat. And this was already mentioned by Susan Bordeaux. People know her, I think, in this book, Unbearable Weight. And Susan Bordeaux shows that there is a change in the meaning of fat from the late 19th century to the beginning of the 20th century. If the fat belly of business and politicians in the mid-19th century were symbols of their wealth, from the 20th century on, in a society of food abundance, overweight becomes a sign of weakness of will and moral inadequacy. From the 70s on, increasingly the size and the shape of the body have come to operate as a marker of personal internal order or disorder, as a symbol of the emotional, moral, or spiritual state of individual. Then this moral character of the size of the body was already stressed by Susan Bordo in this book, Unbearable Way. The willpower expressed in a thin body is also a symbol of the ability to social progress, while a fat body associated with a lower is associated with a lower social status, with laziness and lack of discipline, characteristics harmful to social mobility. In the book, The Intolerable Weight of Ugliness, Joanna Novaes states that the fear of ugliness is mainly the fear of fat. In statements collected in her research, I just want to ask, is everything okay? Do you hear me well?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah,
Everything
okay,
thanks.
perfect. Okay. And then this Brazilian, her name is Joanna Novaes. She has this book, and then The Intolerable Weight of Ugliness. And she states that the fear of ugliness is mainly the fear of fat. In statements collected in her research, many women revealed the social rejection of the fat woman. The statements below show how the interviewees by Novaes experienced the fat phobia. Then I quote one of these interviews. A teacher said, gym teacher, said that if I lose weight, then the men would treat me differently. Of course, the guys aren't going to look at a fat woman. If she uses this word in Portuguese, this is banhuda. It's kind of full of fat. It mainly relates to the belly. Then this will be like a banhuda. And they are going to look at the fit woman who exercise. You call it in Portuguese saradona. It will be the fit woman. And then if you are like this, men will not look at you. And then if you are like that, then men will look at you. And then this woman, this girl said, my life has changed a lot. When I was 27% of fat, I did not leave the house. And 27% is not that much. That's kind of regular, normal percentage of fat for women. But, then when I was 27 of fat, I did not leave the house. Now I feel like people are looking at me. No one looks at a chubby like a banhuda. Nowadays, everyone takes care of themselves. And now I will analyze this idea in 3 different times, the relation between feminism and beauty. Then in the first step, you could say, the first moment during the 60s and the 70s, the feminist movement directed a severe critique of women's pursuit of beauty. According to feminists at that time, women were coerced into seeking standards imposed by patriarchal society, in practice that were considered oppressive. Lipstick, makeup, neat hairstyle, and high heels were signs of a culture that subjugated women. And then this was the first moment, we could say, the beginning of the feminist movement in the 60s and the 70s, all this beauty practice were condemned as a way to subjugate women. And then you have this claim of Dworkin, Andrea Dworkin. It's very important, very interesting. She's a kind of radical feminist of the 70s. And then she says, in our culture, not one part of a woman's body is left untouched, unaltered. No feature or extremity is spared the art or pain of improvement. Hair is dyed, lacquered, straightened, permanented. Eyebrows are plucked, penciled, dyed. Eyes are lined, masquerade, shadowed. Lashes are curled or false, from head to toe. Every feature of a woman's face, every section of her body is subject to modification, alteration. And it's interesting because when you read this, you think this is a kind of very light modifications, because like hair is dyed and you put shadow in your eyes, or you line your eyes, and you just kind of you do a light makeup. And if you compare this to this kind of surgery procedures nowadays, then you see that this is almost nothing. But even though the radical feminists thought that this kind of changing your body is signs of a culture that subjugate women, and this is kind of it is bad for women. Then you have a second moment, and I call this it's a woman feminist called Sheila Jeffreys. They call this second moment a sexy feminism. The relentless criticism of feminists of the 70s and 80s, or 60s and 70s, gives way in the 90s to the acceptance of beauty as a choice, especially by liberal feminists and postmodern feminism. These currents valued the idea of choice and agency. So if beauty practice were chosen by women, there would be nothing to criticize. And then this is the kind of second moment. And you can say that, okay, now women have this power to change their body, and they are free. Then if they choose to wear makeup, what's the problem? If they choose to make to have breast implants, what's the problem if they are free? And also, this moment, the sex feminist stresses the idea that sex can be, to be sexy, can be to have power. Then sex feminism is born, which considers the beauty of the female body and mainly its sexual power over men as part of female empowerment. Women in the 90s, much freer than their mothers, could choose what to wear, how to behave sexually, where to work, whether they want to be mothers or not. Then we have this kind of extreme sexualization, but not as not in order to be a sexual object, a passive sexual object, but in order to be very active with the female sexuality. And one of the symbol of this, the sexy feminism, is Madonna, that's here. The criticism of aesthetic standards and beauty practice give way to the discourse of female empowerment, based on their own choices regarding makeup and fashions and even surgery, if you want. This conception, or this to have a sexual image too. I think that this is important. And in order to be sexy, then you have to wear makeup and clothes, certain kind of clothes, etc. This conception is mirrored in icons such as Madonna here, a symbol of freedom and power arising from extreme sexualization. Now we have this third moment, that it's the criticism of the freedom to choose to be a stereotype. And then in this third moment, liberal and postmodern feminists began to be criticized. And one of the critics is Sheila Jeffries. And she criticizes the view that women can express their choice and agency through beautification practice, beauty practice, or fashion. And this new criticism is well exemplified in Anna Kirkpatrick's expression. Would feminists today be the freedom to choose to be a stereotype? This new wave, which opposes sex feminism, understand that it ignores the reality of male oppression, mistakenly accepting beauty rituals as the fruit of choice based on genuine pleasure. And then this third moment, it's a radical feminist moment. And here, the feminists, this radical feminists, say that perhaps what you are thinking that is choice or agency is only the freedom to be a stereotype, that you don't create a new way of beauty, of female body, and a kind of free free female body or free beauty, a new beauty, but you only choose to be a stereotype. You go back to this kind of stereotype of a sexual body that, even if it's more kind of aggressive, not passive as before, you are still putting yourself in this place of being an object, sexual object, for instance. Now, I ask if whether we could have a kind of new standards of beauty, or if you have to forget this beauty as related to, as a concept that could be related to women. Then criticism of anatomical standards of beauty had led the women's movement and feminists to two possibilities. And then this is my question, what we should do. One is totally denying beauty as a form, considering beauty as a form of subordination of women, whatever the adopted standard. It means that, okay, beauty was always a concept that subjugated women, and we don't want this beauty to be cherished anymore. Or you could having the pleasure of being beautiful and fighting for a kind of expansion of the repertoire of what can be considered beautiful, what can be considered a beautiful woman. And I think that we have these two possibilities. And we have this new beauty, for instance, in the plus-size models. Here we have Ashley Graham and another plus-size model, Brazilian plus-size model, and Ashley Graham is one of the most famous plus-size models. And my question is it possible to reinvent beauty in order to have this idea of beauty to bring power, to empower women? or we should forget it forever, for good. And then my question again is a new beauty possible? A new beauty is possible? And then we have this Brazilian singer, Preta Gil, that becomes a spokesperson, became a spokesperson for chubby or fat women and aesthetic diversity. She is an icon of diversity because she's a woman and she's Black and she's chubby and she's bisexual. And however, assuming a fat body is considered one of the most serious subversions to the current beauty standards. And she was the cover of Brazilian Vogue in 2022. And then my question is, we know that the patterns of what is beautiful change according to time and place. Why can't we reinvent a conception of beauty that corresponds to the feminist ideals of diversity and the acceptance of the real female body? Okay. Okay, thank you.
Many thanks, Maria, for this very interesting talk. I will just for one moment stop the